Welcome to the Plato Paradigm, a paradigm shift in reading Plato's dialogues. Episode 206, Lysis 205d to 206b. We might have expected Socrates to point out that Hippothales is not praising Lysis, but is in fact praising the family of Lysis. But Socrates instead says that Hippothales is praising himself. Whatever else this observation does, whether it is true or not, it should help to make Hippothales turn his attention to his own motivations. What is it, in fact, that he is doing with regard to himself? His immediate reaction is, of course, to deny that he is praising himself. Al uk es emauton efeo Socrates, ute poio, ute ado. But not for myself, he said, Socrates, do I neither produce nor sing. The verb for produce, poio, is, of course, the verb from which we get poem, and Hippothales is saying that, all right, he does make poetry and he does sing, but not for himself. Uk oiege indigo. You don't think so, I said. Tode pos eche, efe. And how is it, he said. Panton malista epon esse tenus in hautai hai hodai. Above all things, I said, these songs pertain to you. Ean mengar heles tapaidicatoi auto onta, cosmosoies daita lechenta kai asthenta, kaito onti encomia hospernenice coti, hoti toiuton paidicon etuches. For if you have seized such a paidica, darling, the things said and the things sung will be an ornament to you, and really like praises to someone who has won or conquered, because you have alighted upon such a darling. So Socrates is suggesting that Hippothales is treating Lysis as a trophy. This doesn't seem to be correct, because the whole problem is that Hippothales is ignoring Lysis and praising his family. Socrates continues with yet another criticism, which also fails to address the actual problem that Hippothales is ignoring Lysis. Eandesev diafuge, hosso an mezzo soie remenae encomia periton paidicon, tosuto mezzonon doxes, calontica agathones teremenos, catagelastos enai. But if he escapes you, the greater the praises having been said by you about the darling, the greater the fine and good things you are deprived of, and you will appear to be that much more ridiculous. Someone ridiculous is someone who is laughed at or mocked, and this is the target in eristics. An eristician wants his opponent to be laughed at. There is no attempt at actually beating someone with logic. The attempt is always to make the opponent look stupid, and an opponent does actually look stupid when all the people listening are laughing at him and not at the eristician. In this case, we are not talking about eristics, but the notion that someone laughed at is stupid still holds. Socrates here is using that threat of appearing to be stupid, and this again addresses a concern of Hippothales himself rather than his relationship with Lysis. Socrates so far has said nothing about the fact that Hippothales ignores Lysis himself. And Socrates, in fact, continues to appeal to Hippothales' selfish interests. Hostis unta erotica, o phile sophos, uke paineton eromenon prinan hele, de dios to melon hoppe apobesitai. So whoever is an expert in erotica, things pertaining to lust, O friend, does not praise the one lusted before he is caught, fearing the future, how it may turn out. We should take a moment, I suppose, to ask ourselves how one can possibly be an expert in lust. Usually people lust without being expert in it. What Socrates seems to be talking about here is not the lust itself, but how the one lusting is going to achieve his objective of somehow taking the one lusted. The moment we talk about strategies, we're not really talking about lust itself, because we're now using our brains, we're using intelligence to work out how to trap the one lusted. And this, in my view, is more to do with rhetoric, the power of persuasion. It might seem that Socrates is suggesting that he himself is an expert on lust, or as we might now say, an expert on rhetoric with regard to obtaining the goal of the one lusted. But we should recall that Socrates is saying what he says to Hippothales, who is the one lusting. And Socrates is using the mindset of the luster, and I would suggest that he's doing this in order to manipulate Hippothales. This is not Socrates actually helping out a fellow luster. We should note that Socrates in this sentence calls Hippothales a friend, philos, and it's not beyond the bounds of possibility that Plato would like us to understand that Socrates is being a philos to Hippothales. Whatever philos might mean, we haven't actually analyzed the dialogue yet. If Socrates calls Hippothales a friend, does that mean that he thinks Hippothales is a friend to him? Or is he saying friend to Hippothales because he himself, Socrates, is a friend to Hippothales, whether Hippothales knows this or not? Socrates continues to appeal to Hippothales' self-interest with another point which is actually only a development of the previous point. Kai hama hoi kaloi epedantis autus epainei kai auxe phronematos epimplantai kai megalauchias eukoe ego gefe. And at the same time, the handsome, whenever anyone praises them and increases them, in other words, puffs them up, they are filled with pride and arrogance. Don't you think so? I do indeed, he said. It's interesting that Socrates stops here to ask Hippothales for his opinion. He hasn't so far. It's also interesting that Hippothales agrees with this point. If he does agree with it so readily, why has he been praising, as he sees it, Lysis? Ukun hoso an megalauchoteroi osin, dusalo toteroi gignontai, egoske. And the more arrogant they are, the harder they are to catch. So it seems. And what sort of hunter do you think he would be if he startled or roused while hunting and made the prey more difficult to catch. It's clear that he'd be worthless. Kaimen de logoistikai hodais, me kelein al exagriainen, polle amusia, egar, dokemoi. And there's a great dissonance in using speeches and songs not to charm, but to make savage. Isn't that right? It seems to me. From the reactions of Hippothales, it would seem that he thinks this argument applies to him, as if his speeches and songs are puffing up Lysis, when in fact he hasn't addressed Lysis at all in his speeches and poems. All the time he is celebrating the family of Lysis. As we have seen, however, he himself insists that he is praising Lysis. Therefore, what Socrates has done here is to go along with the false notion of Hippothales. Given that Hippothales actually does puff up Lysis, then this would be the result, that Hippothales is a bad hunter and Lysis is going to be harder to catch. Were this the case, then Hippothales would be sensible if he were to stop praising Lysis. And this action would be a step in the right direction anyway. It's simply going to be done for the wrong reasons. And this is what manipulation is all about. You persuade someone to do something for the wrong reasons, but these are the reasons which work on that person. Hippothales has a wrong notion. Socrates exploits that wrong notion in order to bring about a particular action which is arguably a good thing. It's certainly good for Ctesippus and the other friends of Hippothales who are sick and tired of listening to Hippothales singing at all hours of the day and night. This is certainly not going to affect Lysis himself, because Lysis hasn't been the recipient of any of these speeches or praises. So we may add this argument to the list of devious things Socrates has already done in this dialogue. This includes actually meeting the youths as if by chance, when he actually knew they would be there, and we may suppose that he is going to exploit this situation so that he will be able to talk to Lysis himself.